You know that thing where you get an amazing pair of shoes at a really great price and want to tell everyone about it? Yeah, so do we. Here at Designer Shoe Warehouse, we'll give you something to brag about, like the latest styles from brands you love, or the trends everyone's obsessing over, or shoes that make you feel like, well, you. So go ahead, show off a little. Find shoes that get you at prices that get your budget. Head to your DSW store or dsw.com today. DSW, let us surprise you.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Fresh Take from What Fresh Hell, Laughing in the Face of Motherhood. This is Margaret.
And this is Amy. Today, we are talking to Melanie Shankle. She is the New York Times bestselling author of several books, including the one we're going to be talking about today, Here Be Dragons, Treading the Deep Waters of Motherhood, Mean Girls, and Generational Trauma. Melanie is also the co-host of the podcast, The Big Boo Cast, and creator of the Big Mama blog. Melanie and her family live in San Antonio, Texas. Welcome, Melanie.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here with y'all today.
So let's start off with this title, which is very evocative. Here Be Dragons. I think I get it, but walk me through why you chose this title for the book.
So several years ago, before I even knew that this was going to be a book, I read an article. I found a thing online, and it told this story about how in ancient times, medieval times, when people would set sail across the sea to explore and to find new lands and all of those things, that they would mark maps in Latin if there was a place where it seemed dangerous or it was unexplored territory. Maybe if a ship had sunk there before and they had reason to believe that danger was there, or sea monsters, that they would mark on that spot, "Here be dragons," in Latin. And it was just their way of saying, be careful. There's danger up ahead. There's something unknown. Just be prepared. And when I read it, I thought, man, isn't that what life is like and what motherhood is like, where you just are going along and you never quite know what is up ahead. So I knew that I wanted that to be the title of this book.
And in terms of how we think about relationships with our daughters and starting to approach this topic, who is the map maker in this metaphor? Are we the map maker for our kids? Are we helping our kids make their own map? Like, as you start to tease out that metaphor, we love a metaphor on this podcast. And sometimes I understand things through metaphor in a way that I don't understand anything else. So as your starting point of this book, who's making the map?
I mean, I think ultimately for me, the map is, I am a person of faith. So I think God is making your map. I think that he's the ultimate map maker, and he's the one that is doing that. But then I think we also are making maps. I mean, I think in our lives, I think we kind of chart our course and we have a way that we think we're going to go. I think as mothers, we kind of want to chart our kids' course. And then we realize the older they get, the less power we have over their specific map, and that they've got to find their own territory and make the map of their lives themselves.
You come at this map metaphor in a bunch of different ways in the book. And one of the ones that just jumped out at me now, talking about the title, is that it's called Here Be Dragons, not Here Might Be Dragons, or Here Could Be. It might be fine. This is a bad part. The bad stuff is going to happen. It's lurking under the water and you can't see it, but it's going to be something. I think we watch our daughters in particular enter this time and sort of like peeking between our fingers, like, oh, no, here comes middle school. It's going to be bad. I don't know why it's going to be bad. It's just everybody says it's going to be bad. And we are map making for our daughters in that case. And I think we come to it with the kind of certainty, like, this is going to be terrible for reasons I can't quite understand yet.
That's it. And sometimes it's going to be terrible for reasons I don't understand. And sometimes the things I thought were going to be great turned out not to be great. Or sometimes the map that I had for my child looks very different because those aren't their gifts or where their talents lie or their abilities. So it's like we have to constantly readjust, and we have to also equip our kids to constantly readjust because life is going to come. I mean, we've all lived enough life where we know life is going to throw some things at you that you were not prepared for.
And one of the things we've talked a lot about on the podcast, which this book captures really well, is that parenthood is a reckoning for ourselves in this very profound way. And I feel like when people say, like, what didn't you know about parenting before you started? It's how much you bring to it and how much you bring to it that you may not even be aware that you're bringing to it, and how much it brings up for myself and friends of mine and family, things that maybe we're still working out from our own childhood. So talk a little bit about that aspect, because I think it's so true.
I think here's what I always say about parenting. I'm like, parenting to me is like when you showed up in college and there was a pop quiz for material that was covered on a day that you slept in, where you're just like, oh,
didn't get the memo.
I did not know. I am not prepared, because you don't know what's going to hit. And I think that as you think about it, it does bring up, the times that my daughter, and she's 21 now, so she's a senior in college and, is on the precipice of real adulthood. And one of the things that she's had to tell me, because our personalities are very different. And I think sometimes as a mother, when you have a daughter, you almost think she's going to be a mini version of you. She's going to feel the same way you feel about things. She's going to approach the world the same way you approach the world. And then you have this person. And I've known from the day Caroline was pretty much old enough to talk that we approach the world very differently. And there are still times that she says to me, Mom, that's your issue. That's your hang up. That's the way you perceive this situation. That's not the way I perceive it. And so much of parenting is letting go of our own biases and our own hurts and our own wounds to let our kids be exactly who they are instead of some mini version of ourselves.
And that requires going back. And then this book is about. Have you read Judith Warner's book, And Then They Stopped Talking to Me?
No, but somebody just told me about that book.
It came out a few years ago. We interviewed her. We'll put the link in the show notes for this episode because it's related. It's more reported and less personal. But she says, I'm quoting her here, we move through life with these origin stories about ourselves that when we go back might be based on faulty or incomplete information. So she argues that we watch our daughters go, there be dragons. We know because we were there. But the story we're telling ourselves about what happened when we sailed through those waters might not be exactly true. And that in order to parent effectively, you have to go back and revisit those times.
Yeah, I think it's so true. And I think you have to look and go, my story is one of having to heal from the ways I was mothered to become a healthier mother. But there are so many things that you don't know you're still wrestling with until you get to that particular situation. And, and I think part of my thing was I came out of I had this mother who was not there for me. So guess what? I'm going to be the perfect mother. I'm going to do everything right. I'm going to make sure she never feels any discomfort and life is always great. And guess what is absolutely impossible is to do that. And we're not supposed to do that because when we look at our own lives, it's it's our struggles. It's our hard fought battles. It's our dragons that gave us character and grit and resilience. And aren't those the things that we want our kids to have in this world that they live in?
I think it can also get complicated. I recently talked to Nora Lally. She wrote a novel called Back to Bainbridge, but it's about her moving into an apartment, 3 generations of women, the mother, the grandmother, and the daughter. And she was saying one of the things that inspired her to write the book is how much her daughter was like her own mother. She had unresolved issues with her own mother, and she found herself parenting. And it's really a beautiful novel about developing some compassion for your own mother and the struggles. You don't really see maybe what went into making her life hard. And then suddenly it feels like such a big job to figure all this stuff out from your own life on the fly while you're trying to do the day-to-day of parenting. It's such a struggle.
It is. And I think those are the dragons. Yeah. You're constantly wrestling with the woman that you are versus the woman that you're trying to raise and how those two things reconcile. And sometimes it just gets a little messy. I think that's why the mother-daughter relationship can be so complicated sometimes because you are two different women who are trying to navigate each other.
We're talking to Melanie Shankle. Her new book is called Here Be Dragons, and we'll be right back. Hellions, it's time for some spring cleaning, and I don't just mean the coat closets. Doing your financial spring cleaning can actually be super easy when you let Monarch do your financial spring cleaning for you. One dashboard that gets your entire financial life organized. No more clutter, no more mess, no more logins scattered everywhere, just accounts, investments, property, and more, all in one place. Get your first year of Monarch for half off, just $50 with promo code FRESH. Monarch allows you to look not only at what you've already spent, but also to plan for the future. With Monarch, you can set savings goals, plan for big purchases, and notice spending trends before they become a problem. I can generate cash flow reports that show me what we spent this quarter, this month, what we're probably going to spend next month, and feel prepared, organized, and knowing how to plan for the future. No more surprises and a lot more clarity. Try Monarch. Use code FRESH at monarch.com to get your first year half off at just $50. That's 50% off your first year at monarch.com with code FRESH. My favorite skincare products actually feel more like self-care, like they're so nice to put on and they smell so good that I'm actually happy when I get to that part of my day. And I swear that is how I feel about Osea's anti-aging body balm.
Amy, you are usually the lotions and potions queen on this podcast, but I have to say, hard agree.
Osea's anti-aging body balm is a liquid silk body balm that combines the lasting hydration of a lotion with the firming power of a serum, leaving skin smoother and firmer.
This body balm is clinically tested and designed to deliver visible results you can see and feel.
So we've gotten to use this product for a couple of months now, and I swear I have really noticed firmer and smoother skin, like on the back of my hands. It's like getting a mini spa treatment from head to toe.
Get a spring-worthy glow with clean, clinically tested skincare from Osea. And right now, we have a special discount just for our listeners.
Get 10% off your first order site-wide with code FRESH at OseaMalibu.com.
That's 10% off your first order with code FRESH at OSEAMalibu.com. Amy, when I'm having a good hair day, it usually makes my whole day better. And that's why on every day, I'm taking Nutrafol.
Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist-recommended hair growth supplement brand. And it's the #1 hair growth supplement brand personally used by dermatologists. Nutrafol's hair growth supplements are peer-reviewed, NSF certified for sport, and clinically tested.
Nutrafol offers multiple formulas for men and women tailored to different life stages and lifestyle factors, so you get support that's actually right for you. Adding Nutrafol to your daily routine is easy. Order online, no prescription needed, with automated deliveries and free shipping to keep you on track.
Let your hair be one less thing to worry about. See visibly thicker, stronger, faster-growing hair in 3 to 6 months with Nutrafol.
For a limited time, Nutrafol is offering our listeners $10 off your first month subscription and free shipping when you visit Nutrafol.com and enter promo code LAUGHING.
That's Nutrafol.com, spelled Nutrafol.com, promo code LAUGHING. So, Melanie, you go through in the book, as you said in the first part, going back and looking at your own relationship with your own mother through your own adolescence, and then you needed to revisit that in order to heal and become the best parent you could be. You call your mom in the book your first mean girl. So tell us a little bit about her and why that is.
It's interesting because I think as a kid, and I think I say this in the book, you almost have something has to be really wrong for you to know that your childhood isn't normal while you're in it. I think as a kid, you're so oblivious and it's all that you know.
Wow, that's really well said. I hadn't thought of it that way. Yeah.
You don't really pay attention. And so I think I knew because my parents got divorced. And so I always felt like I was the kid with divorced parents. So, there's different things that we don't look like these other families that I was around at the time. But I don't think I really realized the dynamics with my mother until I got to college. And there's something about that age, and whether it's that you're getting to an age where you are just more aware of external things, but I would go home with friends, or I would see the way other mothers and daughters interacted when their moms would come to college. And it was that realization of, oh, my mom, we are not like this. We are a constant battle of wills and of temperaments and of her dragging me down and her not being there for me. And that's a really painful realization at 19, 20, 21 years old. But I think that was the beginning of being able to heal from it, because I had just existed in this thing of, and I think the voice that stays in your head is the voice of a parent. And so I had kind of always lived in this world of feeling like I wasn't good enough. And here are all the ways that I was damaged. And here are the things, one of the things that I think I lived with for years was my mom saying, if people really knew you, they wouldn't think you were so great. And you look and think, what a terrible thing for a mother to project on a child. But it stayed with me. And you start to realize the ways that you have to heal from that and recognize that was her brokenness speaking that wasn't indicative of who I was.
Yeah. And one of the things we talk about all the time, I feel like, is sometimes people say, well, this hurts me and this damaged me, as if they have something to apologize for. And the fact is, it hurt you and it damaged you because it was hurtful and damaging. And it's not because you were too sensitive to it. And I think that that can be a big struggle for people, like, oh, well, I just took everything that my ex-partner said to heart because I'm a fool somehow. It's like, no, that person was trying to tear you down. They were really, really good at it. And so, of course, that's the result you ended up with. That's not really on you. That's on the person doing a great job of tearing you down.
Yeah, it's so true. And isn't that so interesting? You hit on something where we take that on and think, well, it's my fault because I shouldn't be so sensitive. And I think especially if you have that person who gaslights you, which my mom was a master of, where if I said, well, that hurt my feelings, she'd be like, oh, your life is so hard. You know, it was always met with this. So it was my issue. It was never the fact that she was saying things she shouldn't have said or acting in a way she shouldn't have acted. And I think that's what that narcissistic borderline personality person does, is they project everything onto the other person.
And to bring those things up, mental illness, you say as you look back, it was probably playing a role. But again, what you know is what you know when you're a kid, and it was less talked about, right? So how do you negotiate all that now?
And I think that's what's so interesting is my mom was diagnosed as bipolar later in life, but in the 70s and 80s, nobody was talking about that. I mean, I had a cousin that went for electroshock therapy. You have these things where I'm like, oh, there was all this mental illness in the family, but nobody really called it that. And I realized that so much of what my mom was doing with her prescription drug use and all of those things was she was self-medicating for things that at that point, nobody was really having a discussion around.
Another thing you talk about in the book is that she created, again, you really have me thinking here about when you're a kid, you don't know the water you're swimming in is the water you're in, right? You don't know there's other kinds of water. And so you were sort of estranged from your father and told a lot of things about him. So you were living in a world where literally your reality was being created. This person doesn't love you. I do. And also but you're not that great. Also, there's that.
Yes.
That's a lot from one person.
It's a lot to take in as a kid, and you don't know how to process it. So it just becomes, whether that's the reality or not, that's what you're told is your reality. So you believe that. So my mom tried to paint my dad as he abandoned us. And as I got older, I was like, well, a dad who abandons his family doesn't still call you every single night, you know, to check in, and doesn't come in every single weekend to see you and all of those things. But you don't, as a kid, you don't know that. And your mom that's your trusted voice. I mean, it's your mother. So you have no reason to not trust the things that she's saying to you.
Yeah. And that's the power of motherhood, is that to some degree, we do make the reality of our kids' lives. And it's not until later, and I think this comes back to the idea of this reckoning, that you start to step out of the bubble and look back in and say, wait a minute, this doesn't look the same as maybe I was told it looked. Mm-hmm. This reality doesn't match. And that's a whole process. So talk a little bit about, and you talk a lot in the book about how your relationship with your mom ended up shaping your own behavior.
It did. I mean, I think, you know, especially in those teen years, because the way my mom, what she taught me was other women are your competition, and you want to be the prettiest one in the room, and you need to present yourself in this way. And everything was a competition. And so I look back at my teen years and I see where that's how I viewed other girls, where it's like I wanted what I couldn't have. And I pursued unhealthy relationships with boys because I was trying to find validation, because it was all about, do you think I'm pretty? Do you think I'm good enough? You know, it was all of those things that shaped me. And it wasn't until I got to college and started to look around and go, this is not a healthy way to operate. Like, this is not a healthy way to operate. And then it took even meeting my now husband, but when we started dating, and just to have fresh eyes to come into your family, because when he met all the players for the first time, I had told him all these stories, and it took him going to a dinner with my dad and stepmom, and then him spending some time with my mom, where he was like, I don't think that what you've been told is accurate.
Wow.
And he was absolutely right, but he was seeing it all with fresh eyes. I was seeing it from the lens of everything that I had been told for 23 years.
I think that's a classic marital dynamic. It's like the frog in the cold water and the frog being thrown in the hot water. You walk in, and I think we all do this when we get married and meet our spouse's family. It's like, oh, here's my take on what I'm
Yeah.
seeing. And it's like, oh, I never noticed that. I've been here for 50 years. I never noticed that before.
That's it. It's the way we've always done things. This is how we do things.
Can we talk a little bit about beauty and the role that it played for your mom and your nanny? You tell a story about your nanny and why she never learned to swim. Tell us about that.
So I've always said, it was funny because somebody who listens to our podcast messaged me just last week and she was like, wow, you've always made jokes about how you come from a long line of vain women. She goes, but I didn't realize how serious you were. And I was like, no, that's not a joke. I mean, I come from a long line of vain women and it was always that you needed to be thin, you needed to be pretty, you needed to have makeup on at all times. I mean, my grandmother got her second facelift when she was 83 years old. I mean, there was a constant quest for beauty. And it was that side, my mom's side of the family. She was one of two girls, and then they had all girls. So it was this very female driven culture. But for all of us, we knew our grandmother was going to monitor our weight. She would let us know when we had gained weight. She would let us know all the ways that we needed to do our hair better or wear lipstick. It was a constant thing. My grandmother, but one of the things you were talking about, Amy, is that she, years ago when I was writing on my blog, somebody was like, what is your grandmother? Her skin looks phenomenal. And she truly never learned. Her mother never taught her to swim because she didn't want her to have the sun damage that being in a lake or a pool would cause. And so that's, and I laugh. I'm like, I have a drawer full of beauty products. So some things run so deep that you can't quite break through, but I hope that we have a healthier thing, because I remember there was even a time we had a family member who was really struggling with some different issues. And my mom's comment was, but at least she looks normal. And I was like, wow, like that.
And that is something I feel like it's so interesting how, and we've talked to people about creating like literally writing what your family values are, because I'd be interested to see if talking to those women, if you said, is beauty the number one most important value that you hold? I don't know that they would say yes. They might say, oh no, it's much more important to be a good person or whatever it is. But often we're playing out things that we're not even totally aware of. Because you talk to people who say, well, the most important thing is for my kids to be happy, but I'm also hiring them 42 coaches and making them practice baseball 8 hours a day. So I think the message is actually that the most important thing is to be really good at baseball. And are you sure that what you're teaching your kids is aligning with what your stated values are? And I think those things get very mismatched very easily.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because I think we get so caught up in, I was talking to some friends about that this week, where I said we can get so caught up in what we want our kids to achieve and what we want them to be. And we lose sight of what's really important. Like that at the end of the day, it's not that they become this star soccer player. It's that they become an exceptional human being. But it's like you said, Margaret, it's like sometimes we get so caught up in we're paying for the training and all of this stuff. And it's like, but for what? Because if they turn out to be a garbage human being, we're going to be real sad that they're great at soccer, but a terrible person.
It's a real metaphor that like we're sending our kids, if we're the map makers for our girls, like, they're here be dragons, be careful, but you can't swim because I need you to make sure you looked pretty.
Yeah.
Good luck. We're actually hampering our daughters even further than our sons by making sure you don't seem mad, don't seem bitchy, don't seem right. Smile at strangers, all of that is like further hampering them as they're about to go into battle with who knows what.
Yeah. And I think our girls especially have so many mixed messages that we've got to raise them to be so strong and to know their value beyond just how they look or what sport they play or whatever. I mean, I have a very strong-willed daughter, and she sent me something this past week that was like, I can't remember, I'm going to get it wrong, but it was basically like, because she's so much like my husband, and she was like, all the personality traits that make me like my dad are the very thing that society tells me that I'm supposed to keep tamped down. And it's like, teaching her, no, that's okay. You can be strong. You can be opinionated. You can say what you think. I mean, I want you to do it in a kind way, but it's okay to be honest and truthful about who you are. And that's how you're supposed to be. So don't feel like you have to be this docile, sweet, demure girl if that's not who you are.
Right. If that's not working for you.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk a little bit about your daughter's story and her own journey with her own dragons.
Yes. It's funny because we got past junior high and I thought, we're going to be fine. I was so worried about junior high. And then high school hit And now I see where, and I tell moms this now that are coming up behind me, I'm like, there's something to me that happens like sophomore year-ish when people start to get their driver's license, because I think you start to see this split as they have more freedom. Because there again, as moms, I think that's when we kind of start to have a little less control because we're not driving them to play dates. They have freedom to go and do. And I think it's at an age where they're very emotionally immature. And so I think girls especially, sometimes there can be this kind of false bond created when they come up with a common enemy. And I watched that sophomore year where my daughter became the common enemy. And it started from, she and I were even talking about it recently. I said, isn't it so weird that all these years later, we still look and go, I don't even know exactly how that all happened. It's like it just snowballed into all of a sudden, she was public enemy number one. And the chief offender was a girl that she had, ironically, my daughter had brought into the group because she felt like she needed a friend and she was lonely. And then this girl turned on her, and it became months of following her into the bathroom, sending her these texts where she would say, I'm going to tell whatever lies I need to tell about you. I'm going to destroy you. I'm going to blow up your reputation. And I still can't even tell you what. And I think that's what's so hard with moms when we deal with mean girls with our daughters, because you sit there and go, am I getting the whole story? Like the amount of times I would be like, because I never wanted to be the mom that was like, oh, my kid would never, because
Sure.
you know, your
My
kid
angel,
would.
yeah.
Yeah. So you're sitting there trying to balance. Did you do something? What is happening? How did this happen? How did we get here? And there never was a great reason. I just think that but then at one point I called the mom. It finally got bad enough. I called the mom of this girl and I said, hey, have you seen these texts? And she's like, yeah, I've seen them. That's just girls being girls. She didn't mean it. And I was like, oh, okay, now I know everything that I need to know, because I was like, if that were my daughter who had sent that text, let's not even talk about when she would see her phone again. It would have been a long time. So you just start to realize like our girls are going to treat people the way we teach them to treat people, and the way they see us treat people, and the way they see us interact with our friends. And if we're teaching them that your peers are your competitors, they're going to view their peers as their competitors. And if we aren't teaching them healthy coping mechanisms to go, listen, one girl's success does not diminish. There's plenty of success for everybody. There's plenty of accolades and trophies and awards. You don't need to diminish somebody else or tear somebody else down to make yourself feel better.
We're talking to Melanie Shankle. She's the author of the new book, Here Be Dragons. We'll be right back.
Amy, let me tell you about a magical place that is so exactly designed to be enclosed space, year-round fun for the whole family that I bet you already know what I'm going to say before I even say the name. Let's say it together on 3. 1, 2, 3. Great Wolf Lodge. You got it, Amy.
My kids loved Great Wolf Lodge when we went. You probably already know that it has a huge indoor water park with a wave pool, lazy river, a bunch of massive water slides. But then your pack can hit the other attractions because, wait, there's more.
Great Wolf Lodge has adventure-packed attractions like Magi Quest, a live-action game kids can play throughout the lodge, plus the Northern Lights Arcade. Spent some quality time there, so your kid who loves the lazy river and your kid who loves fantasy games will both have a great time.
Great Wolf Lodge also offers great dining options and complimentary daily events like nightly dance parties, all under one roof. Unpack the car once and you're settled in to have fun. And with 22 lodges across the country, you're always a short drive away from adventure.
We've both had such great times at Great Wolf Lodge, so bring your pack together at a lodge near you. Learn more at greatwolf.com and strengthen the pack.
All my kids learned to swim when they were little. It was super important to me that they be confident and safe in the water. There was only one problem with that: taking them to swim lessons. I mean, the pools were freezing. There were always cranky adults doing laps right there. And it was definitely not, for any of us, what you would call fun.
Amy, heard. But now there's Goldfish Swim School. Goldfish takes a really thoughtful approach to swim lessons, combining research-based teaching with a warm, kid-friendly environment that actually helps kids thrive in the water.
Every detail at Goldfish is thoughtfully designed to create a golden experience, from shiver-free, warm indoor pools to comfy waiting areas for parents to professionally trained lifeguards on deck.
Goldfish uses an approach called the science of swim play, which combines guided play with proven teaching techniques to help kids learn to swim, build water safety skills, and gain confidence all at their own pace. Lessons are designed to meet kids exactly where they're at.
If you've been thinking about swim lessons or just wondering where to start, this is a great opportunity. Right now, Goldfish Swim School is offering a waived membership plus your child's first lesson free at participating locations.
Just visit goldfishswimschool.com/free to find a location near you and enroll using promo code FREE.
That's goldfishswimschool.com/free, promo code FREE. Melanie, the part that I identified with in this book, from being somebody who was on both sides of this, I also as an adult went back and said, oh, wait. I grew up very affected by the bullying that I experienced in high school. And it wasn't until I was writing about it a couple of years ago that I realized I had done the same thing. I had been on the other side. And so I do think this is it's Here Be Dragons. It isn't like this is what girls do for reasons we don't totally understand yet. And it's so hard to know when you're the mom when to step in. And you talk about in the book, like, should we have stepped in sooner? What made you decide to wait and what made you decide to step in? How did you know?
I think that's so hard. I mean, to me, that's the hardest balance because we never wanted to be helicopter parents. You don't want to be that because I'm like, listen, people are going to be mean. The world is going to be cruel. You're going to have to learn how to handle yourself and how to deal with it. And so we watched for a long time, and Caroline's a strong girl. And I think that's where you kind of have to know your kid, because I think we knew how strong Caroline was. And for a long time, I was like, she's handling it. She's handling it. She's maneuvering. She's working through it. She's figuring it out. But it just got to a point where about 4 months in, we were like, this is not getting any better. This is not getting better. This isn't changing. And so there was a shift. There were two things that happened. Number one, after I had that conversation with that mom, it became really clarifying. We're not going to have any parental support here. And number two, I kept saying, there again, the things we project onto our child, because of my personality, I was just take the high road, just try to ride it out, just be kind, just whatever. And there was a day that Caroline came home from school and my husband looked at her and he said, hey, they're not letting up and they're following you into the bathroom. And he was like, this is war. He was like, you can fight back. And in that moment, there was so much clarity. I saw like a light come on in Caroline's eyes, because that's what she needed to hear, was that she could fight back and that she could defend herself and that she could stand up to them. And about 2 days later, that's what she did, and just essentially said, if you don't stop, I'm going to the administration. I'm going to tell them what's been going on. This is what's happening. And that really, at that point, kind of put an end to a lot of it. And she did have to go to the administration and say, this is what's happening. And then the administration stepped in to take some protective measures and to make it stop. But I think that's the hardest gauge as parents, because you want our kids to know how to fight their own dragons, because we're not always going to be there to fight their dragons for them. But how long do you let them? And I think that's just doing careful inventory of what your kid needs.
I'm on this struggle right now. I have a new teenage daughter.
God bless you.
And yeah, I mean, it's great, but I'm getting nervous. Mm-hmm. And I think that one of the things that I'm balancing from my own raising and trying to figure out going forward is this idea of you should always be the bigger person. Like, kindness was a huge value in my family, which is a great value, but I kind of look now and I think of all the times I should have been tougher rather than kinder, that my default to kind has not always served me that well. But I struggle with telling my daughter, all my kids really, oh, just be nice, make sure you reach out to that person. And then sometimes, right, you reach out to the person and that gets you in trouble with other people. And it's like it's a tapestry. You can't just pull one string and say, this is what you should do, because then you're unraveling a whole other section you didn't see. And I do find that balance right now between kindness as a value versus standing up. So I'm glad to hear that story and that it had a positive outcome, because that's kind of where I am right now in terms of, I want you to be kind, but I don't want you to be kind at the sake of your own happiness.
That's it. Is at some point you have to be able to stand up for yourself and say enough is enough. And that's a hard line to walk. But at some point you're like, well, now you're just a doormat, and they're going to keep berating you or keep targeting you because you're putting up with it in the sake of kindness. I mean, your heart's in the right place. But at some point they need to know, no, I'm going to stand up for myself and I'm not going to let you treat me
you
this way.
you can't humble your way into being treated better by somebody who's mistreating you.
No. And they're never going to change. I mean, you being kind to them is never going to be like, well, but they're so nice. I mean, that's never going to happen. I mean, they're going to see you as a weak target and they're going to keep,
So how do you hold both things? Because you talk about in the book how we need to teach our daughters the value of female friendship, which I'm all for, right? We treasure it. We should hold it at the center of our lives. It's very, very important. But here be dragons and girls are awful and you need to stand up for yourself, right? I feel like I learned that lesson too well as a teenager. And then I was like, women aren't to be trusted. So how do we remain open-hearted enough to face our dragons and then open our hearts at the same time?
I mean, I think that's the balance. One of the things that Caroline and I had real conversations about was, I was like, I think girls, maybe because of movies you watch or shows that you're like, oh, I want to have this great group of like 15 girlfriends and we all get together and all of that. And I think that there's something with teenage girls where they just don't always have the emotional maturity to do that in a healthy way, because there's going to be jealousies and there's going to be insecurities and all of that. So I had read something years ago, and I don't know who to credit this to, but it was like, find your 4 quarters. Like, would you rather have 4 quarters or 100 pennies? And I'm like, find your 4 quarters. You may only have 1 or 2 friends, but find the girls who are for you. Find the girls who build you up. Don't be afraid to walk away from a group, because I think so many times girls get stuck in a group and they just they're going to stick with that group no matter what, because we've all been friends since 6th grade. And that's great, but sometimes that group doesn't work anymore and the dynamics have changed. And so let's free up our daughters and give them the language to say, I'm going to go spend more time with the girl that I sit next to in math class who has become really kind and seems like a really good person and like a really good friend. Because if these people are constantly making you feel less than, making you question everything about yourself, finding ways to tear you down, those aren't your friends. And so it's being able to walk away from a group and saying, this no longer works. I'm going to go in search of people who are my real people. And I think the older we get, the better equipped we are emotionally to do that. But I think that's where as moms, we can kind of do some map making to try to guide our girls towards girls that we see treating each other with kindness and respect.
Tell us about your mom, your decision to sort of remove yourself from her for your own health and how that ended up for you.
It just had gotten to the point. It was a really hard thing to do because I think, Margaret, I think maybe you said it earlier, but there is something about when you become a mother. I think I looked at my mom with a different lens because I was like, oh, I didn't know how hard this was. I didn't know how you're emotionally wrung out so much of the time and you're tired and you're just doing the best that you can. So I kept trying to give her grace after I became a mother because it was the recognition of, oh, this is really hard. But she seemed to get worse and worse. And our relationship had just evolved to a point where it was just not healthy in any way. I think you have to evaluate relationships and go, is there more good here than there is bad? And that's what was so hard for me with my mom, is because she wasn't always this. I mean, I have some great memories with my mom. We had a lot of laughs. She could be a lot of fun. She could be light in my life. But then when the dark came in, it was so dark and so damaging that when Caroline was 6 years old, kind of through a series of events and different things that happened that I talk about in the book, but it finally got to a point where it was like, I can't remain in this relationship. This is too toxic. And I wanted to know that I was going to walk away, not out of bitterness and not out of anger, and not with unforgiveness, because I was like, at that point, I'm perpetuating an unhealthy cycle. But I needed to do it just going, listen, I forgive you. I love you. I think you've done the best that you could do, but I can't stay in this relationship because it's keeping me from being the mom that I want to be and the wife that I want to be and the woman I want to be. And so I made the decision to walk away.
And we hear from people all the time. Amy and I both have close relationships with our family of origin, and it's something that I like to have someone who can speak to for people. On our Facebook group, people will sometimes just approach motherhood with a tremendous amount of trepidation and fear. And the question that we get is like, how do I break this cycle? How do I not make the mistakes that my family makes? And then you talk about sometimes it's an overcorrection. Like, I'll never make my child feel bad. Well, not quite the job either. So talking to people who are listening, who are coming out of a very dysfunctional family of origin, what do you say to them as they're on their motherhood journey about their map and how it'll look for them?
Yeah, I think to me, it's so scary because I think we can all look at things and go, I don't want to repeat this cycle. But I think a big part of it is identifying it. I think just doing the work of going, this was a way I was raised or a way that I was parented. And here are the specific ways, even if you make a list, almost like you talked about setting out your intentions for your child. If you make a list and go, here are 3 patterns that I don't want to repeat in my child's life. And then intentionally set out to do it different. And for me, it was that I would say that my mom was always the thermostat that controlled the temperature of every room. I always felt so responsible for her emotional well-being. I was always trying to contort myself into being this thing or not saying this thing or whatever. So it was very intentional when I became a mom that I was like, I never want Caroline to feel responsible for my emotional well-being. That's not her job as a child. I don't want her to feel responsible for my happiness or being everything for me, because that's just too much pressure to put on a person. So it's figuring out, what do I want to do differently, and then intentionally doing that. And I think you'll be surprised that, because I think part of the battle is, I think there's so many people who continue to parent unhealthy because what you do is you just kind of push aside your childhood and go, well, that's that. I'm going to put a big old Band-Aid on it and say that everything's fine and we're just going to go through. But I think being able to identify certain things equips you to be better.
It occurs to me that it's going back and excavating, then you make a better map. Right? Instead of just like, there's some stuff down there.
That's it.
And I don't want to look. Yeah. It's like, no, I've been down there. I know exactly what's down there, and it's not great, but here's how you're going to handle it. It's much better. It's a better way to equip.
Mm-hmm. And it's painful. I talk in the book about an analogy because I go to an esthetician for my face, where it's like when you want to get rid of your sun damage, they can do like a surface laser treatment and that's fine. But if you really want to undo it, they do that like horrible laser that peels back the layers and it's very raw for a while. But ultimately, it brings real healing. And I think the same is true of our emotional life. Sometimes you have to peel back and really dig the depths of what this looks like. And that's hard because, especially if you've lived in some denial, to say, oh, here's where my parents failed me or could have done things better. And that's a really hard thing to do.
We've been talking to Melanie Shankle. Her new book is called Here Be Dragons, Treading the Deep Waters of Motherhood, Mean Girls, and Generational Trauma. We will put the link in the show notes so you can get this book. Melanie, tell our listeners where else they can find you.
Mainly Instagram. You can find me on Instagram, Melanie Shankle. I post a lot there. That's kind of tends to be my home these days. I still have my website, which is thebigmamablog.com, and I'll post our podcast notes there. And then our podcast, The Big Boo Cast, is on Spotify or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
And we will link to all those places in the show notes. Melanie, thanks so much for talking to us today.
Thanks so much for having me. Love talking to y'all.
Thanks, Melanie.